Welcome, everyone, through all time and space to an all new episode of Weebs on the Weekends, a podcast where we break down the anime news highlights of the week and give a retrospective look at anime that premiered 10 years ago. Today's episode will be covering the news from the third week of November 2020 and give our thoughts on the first three episodes of the 2010 anime Bakuman. My name is Jay Johnson. I'm a part time Weeb and full time English language sensei. And with me, as always, is my co-host Sam Martinez, part-time weeb and full-time automail mechanic. How you doing today, Sam?
Azul Mudaris Johnson, Manek ad nt tiget.
All right, so you were definitely serious about this language being difficult to pronounce. All right,
It was
so
the last half of that sentence. It was the hardest for me. That's why I had to take a
all
little
right.
time for prep.
Oh no, I understand. Yeah, like those gaps and like the pacing was all off, and it was like you're usually nice and fluent with your languages, but like
It
today,
wa- it was mainly so that I could pronounce it right. That's why it was spacing in between the words and the sounds at the end.
yeah, that's very noticeable. But yeah, it's very important when it comes to intonation for like certain words. Like off the bat, I can't really say that I recognize it. But yeah, how I've been doing, teacher, I've been doing pretty well this week. I mean, my city's in lockdown, so I had to go back to virtual teaching, which has been like a little bit of a pain. I do prefer it because I can get virtual teaching has the benefit of like having students kind of have their anonymity behind the screen because they're not in class, they're not feeling as much pressure to perform in front of the other students. So I am getting a lot of like responses from students that are usually quiet in class. So I do prefer that kind of aspect to teaching that I'm reaching students that normally wouldn't be reachable to me. So that's nice. Personally wise, quarantine now is really intense. So I'm only really teaching like 4 hours a day, which is nice, but like now I've got a lot less time. So I only have to go to work for 4 hours and I come right back home. And I'm so far north is that the sun rises around 8 a.m. and then it doesn't, and it sets around 5 p.m. So there's only really like 8 hours of light. So I'm at home most of the day with darkness is my friend. So it's a little much to deal with quarantine and a city lockdown, especially now that oh my gosh, the Demon Slayer movie finally came to my city, and I don't know if I'm able to see it yet. Hopefully tomorrow, given that public transportation is going to be back with some restrictions, but hopefully I'll be able to get to theaters where they do have like every other seat is going to be like vacant, so there is going to
Yeah.
be like that safe distance for. There's going to be no popcorn, no food served, so that's nice. But yeah, that's how my week's been, Sam. How about yours?
Mine was pretty well. I would say my predicament with the Fate Stay movies, it's sort of in limbo similar to yours because as I said last week I was able to go and see the first and the second one in theaters, and it was similar to what you said how they're setting up your theater tickets with Demon Slayer. We had to order our tickets online and they would only allow so many spaces for so many seats, and when I went over there, there wasn't hardly anybody. But as I said, you would have to have. It was a sort of like a block of seats that was around everybody. So at least like one seat in every direction was free, and you can sit next to anybody that way. And the reason why I say that my movie's in a similar predicament of yours because I just recently got an email saying that some theaters had shut down again. My movie is tonight. It's supposed to be around 7:30, and it's supposed to be the newest one, the third one, the one that I really want to see. And so I'll be seeing tonight whether or not my theater is open, and if it's not, hopefully I can get my money back. We'll see. But I really want to see that movie because I'm now a little bit more invested. Hopefully we'll be able to see our movies, man.
Yeah, because I love like movies are just one of my favorite pastimes, and given that quarantine has been intense in some places, that movie theaters just don't operate how they used to, and like even the film industry is kind of taking a very much of a back seat in 2020. Even that,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Oh
isn't it
yeah.
the first year in like 10 years that there's been no Marvel movies in theaters. I mean, Scarlet Witch and the Vision got pushed back. Same thing with Scarlet Witch, like her solo movie. Not Scarlet Witch.
Black Widow.
Wait, Black Widow. Yeah, her movie got pushed. So yeah, it's the 2020 has been a year of no Marvel movies. But that's news for you. But anyways, Sam, you got some other news. So
That is a great segue transition there, Jay. The greatest that we've had thus far.
I try.
For the news, I've got four pieces of news, some anime news, and some real life news that uh, sort of relate to anime. We'll get to that in a minute. The first bit of news that I have here, manga Dragon's House Hunting revealed that they are going to be getting an anime adaptation in April. And essentially, the premise of this show, Dragon's House Hunting, is that this dragon is pretty much docile and doesn't want to live up to the stereotypes of what it is to be a dragon and is essentially kicked out of his home.
Yeah, so it sounds a little bit akin to Miss Kobayashi's Maid Cafe or Dragon Maid, and I like those slice of lives that they give you like these fantasy characters and like normal settings. So like the maid, Dragon Maid is just like a dragon comes to her world. She's in human form, but she keeps her dragon tail and horns exposed. But all she wants to do instead of being like a destroyer of worlds, a hoard gold, that she just wants to be a maid, and it's endearing. It's an easy way to endear the audience to characters when they've
Yeah.
been set on a path because of culture or their people or their histories or their families, and then they're just like, no, I'm going to pursue something that I want to do because I'm my own person. So it's a very easy way to get wrapped up in a slice of life, which we do have a slice of life to talk about later in this episode. But yeah, so it sounds interesting enough for me to check out or give it a 3 episode test, given that Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid kind of did the same premise, and there's always a need for fantasy and fantasy in the nowadays to escape to. So yeah, interested.
Oh, oh no, no, I definitely see what you're saying because at least having some soft fantasies, for instance, not something a little bit along the lines of Lord of the Rings. I say Lord of the Rings is soft fantasy mainly because it's a nice, fun journey. There's definitely some serious stuff that happens, but essentially, for the most part, it's just you enjoying the journey that everybody else is on. And so that's why I say it's a little bit light. And just so you know, with this anime, the dragon character is in dragon form, it seems. Whether or not they'll be able to change into human form, that's still to be determined. But from the promo images, it seems as though that the dragon's going to be in dragon form. So I don't know how that would affect the story. So on to the next bit of news. As I get my page loaded up. There is some more promo videos on the anime Okinawa Baba's Kumo Desu ga Nani ka. So basically, the English version of that is "So I'm a spider, so what?" And the anime series will be airing on January 8th at 9:30 p.m. 2021, and they just released some more info on the people who are the cast. Again, it's going to be somebody who was from Made in the Abyss, another person who was in Death March, and voice actor from Jujutsu Kaisen is going to be in it as well as somebody who was in Enen no Shibutai, and I'm trying to see if there's anybody in here that you may know. The music, it's going to be the guy who did Overlord, Shuji Katayama, and the sound director, Shin Itagaki, Yuichi Imazumi. And the studio is Millie Pensy. So I'm trying to see. And Millie Pensy did Berserk, I'm trying to go through real quick. Some magical girl type stuff, it seems, but it seems as though their main claim to fame is their work on Berserk. So, Jay, a little bit since we're still in the isekai or touching on the isekai genre, really, what are your thoughts on the this isekai? So I'm a spider. What?
Yeah, so I've been looking forward to this for like I would say 2 years now, given that I originally heard about this given all the isekai going up at the time. So this was like hype for a while that the isekai is basically centered around a female protagonist that basically gets embodied or reincarnated as a spider. So again, given that title of I'm a spider, so what? And kind of taking in the same vein of like I was reincarnated as a slime, is that her idea of progression is going to be like um, what you would say like a Sisyphean task where she's not going to be overpowered. She's going to have like a special skill, but she has to use that special skill to get over on the dangerous world that she's been reincarnated into. And again, like she's a human in the spider's body, so she has the intelligence of an advanced world, but she's coming back into a primitive magical world. So I'm very interested to always see that dynamic. And with Slime coming season 2 in January 2021, so like these are going to be like back to back isekais that I'm going to be interested to check out.
Oh, definitely. And when you said that, I really appreciate how you compared it to Slime because in the promo videos that I saw, it reminded me so much like of Slime because when Slime started out, he was in a cave in a dungeon and he had to level up before he can leave the cave. And it seems as though they're taking the same route with her. And again, with her being a spider, it seems as though she has more limitations than the slime. So her winning victories would definitely be more well earned and you'll be more invested in her because of her limitations and her having to outwit her obstacles so to speak. And there was also footage of her, if not her, a spider that looked like her gets wounded or mortally wounded, and because they're a spider, they don't have the regen properties of a slime, so that definitely does raise the stakes. So I am a bit interested to see how this would force somebody to grow and how they would take their approach to having to upgrade in a dungeon when that happens. And did you read any of? Because I think it was a light novel before this adaptation. Am I correct in saying that, Jay?
Yeah, it's a light novel, and I haven't gotten a chance to because something that really bothers me with light novels is how they get adapted. So I always want to let the anime speak first and then go back to revisit the light novel. Same thing like with SAO,
Yeah,
was like it's a weird adaptation process. So I want to see how the studio, which is known for like their use of CGI or heavy CGI that does side on the more janky side of CGI, because there are some animation stills or the trailer or PV for the series, like the preview for the series, does show like the spider moving in like kind of janky ways. So that can definitely be cleaned up before the premiere. But yeah,
yeah.
I'm letting the anime speak as the authority, and then go back to see the light novel.
Okay. No, no, that's definitely a good way to view things because with a light novel, it's just a written. It's the written word. It's not necessarily pictures like a manga. So it's sort of hard to compare a book to a movie because at least with a book, the reader is allowed to use their own imagination. If they're given some images, you have some parameters, but for the most part, you use your own imagination. Whereas in a manga, you have pictures to more focus or to clearly focus your imagination and things like that. And when a work is going from written form to the big screen, And this is something that we've seen with the Harry Potter series. There was huge backlash with how a person was depicted in the movie versus how they were written out in the book. And no, that what your approach is definitely giving it a fair shake in things. So on to the next bit of news. This is a bit of news that if you hadn't heard, you're probably going to be very excited about. The official Twitter for the Code Geass project had announced that a new project in the Code Geass series will be unveiled on December 5th at 8 p.m. on YouTube Live. And it just goes into a little bit about Code Geass and gives an overview, a little bit about the last film and the recap of the series. So let's see. There was also a series that had a spin-off from the manga. It was called Code Geass Akito the Exiled, and that premiered in 2012. And that is my opinion that the new news of Code Geass, it has to do with Akito the Exiled. But you're more. I would feel as though that you're more invested in the Code Geass franchise than I am. So I think you would have a better idea of what you think the announcement would be.
Oh well, yeah, I did hear about this. Again, I'm follow them on Twitter now, given that I'm a Twitter person now. But anyways,
Hmm.
yeah, can't let good things just go off in the night, can they? They just have to dig things up. They have to besmirch like a classic's name by dragging it through the mud and like bringing it back. Like, yeah, all those things you loved before, you can love them some more and not let a story end. So again, I'm in the camp of the movie most recently, what, a year ago, 2 years ago, Lelouch, the Resolution. Yeah, last year, Lelouch or Code Geass, the Resurrection of Lelouch, is a good epilogue to the story. Again, like it's nice given how the series ended, kind of ambiguously, and the movie gives us a more defined uh, ending and like answers the question that a lot of fans have been lingering on for like years because the manga kind of leaves off where the anime leaves. But again, like both of them are very ambiguous, and I think that was the majesty of it, the majesty of it.
Yeah,
And
the
then
ambiguity.
yeah, and then the movie was like, okay, this is a good epilogue. It doesn't do anything to diminish the story. It doesn't compromise any of the characters in a way. It kind of gives a more I would guess a more happier ending because like the ending to Code Geass is very melancholy, even though it wraps up in a very satisfying way. It's very just dour, I guess. So
Yeah.
we get a little bit more of a happier ending that people can like say, "Oh, I love Code Geass and the movie," while like something in epilogic as
Dude,
well.
Naruto has so many unnecessary movies. It's I'm
Yeah, I would
sorry.
say that Naruto the Last does fit into the same way because the whole resolution of Naruto and Hinata's love story has a finite resolution in that movie, and it does feel like it completes the story that Hirokoshi,
I think
Kitamoto, Kitsumoto,
Yeah,
yeah,
Kishimoto.
yeah, Kishimoto was trying to tell, but again, it's. I mean, Kishimoto has been like on record as saying like how Shonen Jump kind of extorted him into continuing Naruto far past a point that he wanted to continue the story, just given the popularity of it. But yeah,
Yeah.
Naruto the Last does fix a lot of problems that were just left to linger in the series, while Code Geass was a complete story. So I'm not in the camp of I want more Code Geass. I will check it out because I'm a fan, but it's like I'm fine in the camp of I don't need more of the thing I love because I love the thing that I love.
Like you said, well, it seems as though you're in the camp with Childish Gambino in the sense that in an interview that he did some time ago, he was saying how he wanted to stop making music, and everybody was surprised about it. And he was more, again, in the same camp that you are, where leaving, making something good and then just being finished with it. And he was saying something along the lines of how people, especially with the Western mindset, they just keep wanting and wanting and wanting. When they just can't accept the fact that like some things just have to end and just be left alone.
Yeah, yeah, that was that. Oh my gosh, yeah, that was basically right before the time of "This Is America" came out, and
Yeah,
Childish Gambino during one of his concerts said, "See you on the last album," and the backlash that he got from that, it was like the ownership of his fandom was like, "Oh no, you keep making music until we tell you you can stop," kind of mentality about it. So yeah, he speaks very not highly, but he speaks very openly about how toxic music fans can be, in particular, that they feel like they are owed something because they've been supporting an artist instead of just letting artists, pursue something that they love and say, no, I did what I came here to do. My job is to produce music. It's not to placate to your idea of who I am. So, same way as anime fans, they want to have a specific idea of what a series should be or what a mangaka could be. That'll come up again later in the episode. But anyways,
exactly. No, no, I'm glad that you make that parallel because I was going to make it too, and it would be a good transition to the series. But I've got one more bit of news. Just it's a bit of a transition to the news as well because this is what I had mentioned earlier, how it's dealing with the real world and the anime fans that are in this real world as I bring up this news article. So it was this news article was saying that there were fans of the Demon Slayer or warned not to climb a mountain in cold weather. Mount Kumatori is one of the sacred places for demon fans, as it's supposed to be the birthplace of the Kamado siblings. And there were some fans that were found climbing the mountain, but not in proper mountain attire. They're just in t-shirts and shorts, and these fans have been turned away because of their lack of ill preparedness. And the Akutama Visit Center has issued warnings to beginners to take at least 6 to 7 hours for expert climbers.
yeah, I've seen that story before because a lot of mangakas do take inspiration from where they've grown up or areas that they're familiar with. I mean, we just talked
Mhm.
about uh, last episode about the creator of Attack on Titan. Like his idea
Yeah,
of Wall
exactly.
Maria came from his hometown having a dam or a hydroponic plan. But yeah, Sam, what were you saying about the mountain?
No, it was just saying how with most experts or beginners, experts, it takes about 6 or 7 hours to reach the peak, and beginners, it takes about 10. And they were saying that for people, let's see, it was saying that they suggest that beginners should take warm clothes, spare change of clothes, equipment, and that this trek would even take as long as 2 to 3 days for people who don't know what they're doing. And I'm just saying that like it seems to be like this huge influx of people who think that they can go and climb this mountain because they've seen how Tanjiro can breathe a special way. And I'm thinking it's sort of like the Area 51 thing, faux pas that happened, is because people set out and think that they can do it in such a short amount of time without any training, that they're going and hurting themselves. But what do you think about this? As you said earlier, there's these real landmarks that have inspired mangakas to write these great works, and then we're having fans go and visit these same places.
It's nothing new. I mean, it is a news story technically, but it's one of those news stories that is always news because fans are always doing these kind of things.
Yeah.
They're going to places that they shouldn't. I mean, but Japan has a lot of sacred sites that, again, like illustrators and artists kind of take inspiration from, and it's like drawn tourism for like positive effects on Japan's like tourism industry, but also with Japanese fans, they want to go to these sites and not basically take reasonable care. So even in the first episode of Demon Slayer, like the town that Tanjiro's family grows up in is basically a full day's journey by foot, and that's continuous traveling time. So that means like stopping and resting would mean basically a 3 days, like you said, Sam. So it's like even in the anime, there is a idea of realism that comes into it, or the distance that that mountain village is on. So it's kind of falls in the camp of delusional fans. I mean, again, like delusional fans are aplenty in anime because they have such a strong emotional resonance, maybe because of empathy or that the anime touched them in a way, so they want to get connected with those characters. That's why like parks and theme amusements are so popular in Japan.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised at all that this is happening even in these times. But yeah, people need to start taking more care with their fandom.
Exactly. And touching a little bit on uh, how cultural sites are important to the Japanese people, as you said earlier, the anime that we're going to be talking about has to deal with Japanese culture and everyday life. So, Jay, that was all that I have for the news. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Bakuman and why you chose it for us to review this week?
All right, no problem, Sam. I knew you were going to say Bakuman at one point during this episode. No, it's funny. I was just expecting it. I was expecting it. But yeah, Bakuman, which I think would be a very cool name for Bakugo from My Hero Academia to be his hero name, since he's kind of gone uh, unnamed, I guess, for like all these issues. Like everyone has a hero's name, but he doesn't, and the fans have called him Ground Zero for the longest times because that's kind of a
Oh,
alliteration to his name.
that would be
Uh,
great. I feel as though
yeah.
what's the name of the rabbit hero? I feel as though she should give him a name. I think that would probably be the
Um,
best.
Yeah, Mirror,
Yeah, Mirio.
but yeah,
Or yeah.
Mirio, yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah, Ground Zero be yeah, it's like kind of um, uh, not what would you call it? It would be like uh, identifying with his kind of mentality about being a hero that he needs to be the first one on the scene. I always thought like his cool
Yeah.
hero name would be like first responder, but that's like way too long. But Ground Zero, I like it a lot, given that Ground Zero is what you also call the site of an explosion going off.
Pretty
So that's
much.
why like fans have been like rallying behind that. But Horikoshi's not the kind of given into like uh fan praise, because like also fans turned on him like a couple of issues ago for trying to take some time off from doing the manga publication, and they were like, no, you owe us our manga. And same thing with like the trader arc in My Hero Academia, is that, oh yeah, what trader? I don't know, I just thought of it and it was an earlier draft and never paid off. Sorry, spoilers for My Hero Academia. Anyways, back to uh, yeah, back to the anime we're talking about. 2010. We're going back in time as always, and I always forget to mention that time codes are in the description, but they are. So yeah, Bakuman premiered back in October 20, or on October 20. Sorry, it premiered back on October 2nd, 2010. So we're just over on the 10-year anniversary. Oh no, we're
Mhm.
way over the
Yeah.
10-year anniversary. But anyways, yeah, for a 25 episode run, which actually turned into 75 episodes because it is a highly popular series, given that it has a strong acclaimed manga attached, or this is an adaptation of a strong manga. So there are 3 seasons in total available on Hulu. Well, you watched it on Hulu, Sam. Yeah, I watched it for free on Tubi TV. Have you ever heard of Tubi? A Australian streaming service. So very interesting that they had the right to license Bakuman. But yeah, this is a
Okay.
Japanese anime adaptation of the manga of the same name, and it is illustrated and written by the same creative team of that did Death Note. So if it looks any bit familiar, even in episode 1, there's a call out to saying between the characters, "Oh, is this your Death Note?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." So yeah, I like how authors can call back to their own work. Same thing with like Soul Eater and right, self-referential stuff. Like even in Fire Force, most recent episode, like there was a shout out to Soul Eater, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know what that is, being one of those fans. But yeah, and it's interesting that the whole premise of Bakuman is about a aspiring writer and an aspiring illustrator trying to work together become a mangaka or manga artist. So same thing with how this series itself is written and illustrated by a pair of writer and illustrator. So this is animated by Studio JC Staff, and you probably know them, Sam, because they animate. Is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? And I know them, and I know them from Food Wars or Shogogeki no Soma. So it's also directed by the director of Toradora. You can kind of see like that influence in the show, given
Yeah.
that the same director does the storyboards for the a series, and he did the storyboards for Toradora. He has like a good sense of character design as well as how Japanese school life. Actually, they're not even high school students, which is a first for me. I don't think I've ever seen a middle school anime before, but yeah, the setting is anime. So, or the
Yeah.
setting is middle school. So
Cause
yeah, it
they
falls in the
were
genre.
ninth grade, I believe, so it's like on the cusp of high school.
Yeah, they're ninth grade students, the two main leads, and it does fall in the genre of comedy, coming to age story, as well as slice of life. And I think this is the first PG series we've covered. Sam, is that right? It feels right because we've been leaning hard into the R rated series for the past couple of episodes.
You're right. We need to make something for the kids.
Yeah, yeah. So this is definitely for the kids, but yeah, I'm overly. If I was going to say anything about Bakuman, that this is one of those titular titles that weebs like to push up their glasses about is that, hey, have you seen this anime called Bakuman? And they're like, no. Well, you're not a real weeb, then, are you? So, if we're going to make a tier list, is that Bakuman definitely falls in the character of yo a weeb because like this is like high tier of high criticism of like weeb kind of like gatekeeping if you've seen this series
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
yeah, the manga is like beloved, it's acclaimed. Again, it's talking about the creation of manga as like the industry or as the art form, and like I wanted, and I put this on our list to watch, Sam, because I'm interested how well it translated. So, how well do you think that coming from a non-Japanese person, how did this feel to you?
To me, I felt as though it was just very interesting because I think I was able to experience a little bit of Japanese culture. It wasn't necessarily in my face, but it was like out an open window, so to speak. For instance, the main character, I forgot his name. His name is Moritaka or Mashiro. No, Mashiro, his main character, sorry, the main character Mashiro, how he explained his relationship with his father. I would say that that's sort of typical of a Japanese home, but then again, I don't know. We've only been exposed to that one relationship, and he essentially explained how he would talk to his mom and his mom would talk to his dad, and the way that the dad was sort of like the head of the home. Basically, if anybody wanted to do anything, say if he wanted to go and join a sports team or anything else like that, then he would go through his mom and his mom would go through his dad, sort of like a hierarchical type situation. And it was even interesting as well too, because when Mashiro wanted to talk to his mother was making food with his grandfather, and he was saying, "Hey, mom, I need to talk to you." And granddad left, right? He sort of respected the hierarchy. Even though he was there living with them, he didn't really have a say in their affairs. And so, like, that was just interesting as sort of a respect for how that family operated. And again, I'm not sure if that's typical Japanese, but you, Jay, living in a more Eastern society, would you say that hierarchy is typical, or it was just an isolated incident?
It sounds well, at least as it's presented. I think no, I don't even say I think, but I do know that as Bakuman is a very culturally sound and very culturally resonant anime series, and that's why I really picked it, because that is something that I see in like the culture that I'm in, as well as like how I've
Yeah.
experienced like Japanese family life, like their daily occurrence of like as soon as in a situation of like a one parent household, even as rare as like Japanese divorces are, a lot of, I don't want to speak anything bad about a culture in a general sense, but when I've seen when it's a single parent household, that single parent, especially if it's led by a mother, is one of like absolute authority, because like the man has been removed or taken out due to death or divorce. So it's something for parents or the grandparents' place to basically step aside, because this is your child. You get to say whatever you want to guide their life, where I guide your life, so like you're a product of me but they're a product of you. So as like your parent, I will respect your authority as a parent to remove myself from. So like I did pay attention to
Yeah.
that, so I'm glad that maybe that resonated with you more. But the thing that really resonated with me, I guess, the most in the series is how it is so um, autobiographical, because like the attention they pay to like mangas.
It felt that way because, as you said, with the artists, they did Death Note, and they're also working on another work right now. I can't remember what it's called, but it's essentially a different version of Mirai Nikki, but instead of having cell phones that or diaries that tell the future, each person that's in competition to become the deity of their world, they have an angel by their side. So, as you said, like it seems as though these two people, they've known and they work well with each other, and the way that they had explained the statistics of what it means to become a popular mangaka and a little bit of the work that it takes to become a mangaka. Hell, when they go to the studio and they open up the different drafts that was sent to the editor, it was mountains. Well, not necessarily mountains, but like everything was organized. But it was essentially a closet filled to the brim with boxes and papers and things like that of different drafts and different storyboards. And this was all from a guy who couldn't draw worth a darn, right? He his drawings made the art style for Dragon Ball look like Michelangelo's stuff. And yet this guy who couldn't really draw had a mountain of rough drafts and storyboards and just showing how even something basic had to have so much work behind it before it can try to become popular.
Yeah, true, but I would say that Michelangelo wished he was Akira Toriyama. But anyways, that's just my personal opinion. But yeah, so yeah, a lot of the series, like, I mean, we just watched the first three episodes, but the whole arc of these first three episodes, like to pass the 3 episode test, is just getting the main character, Mashiro, just to accept the idea that it's acceptable for him to pursue his dream. So like even in the
Yeah,
first episode, it's a basically a dual. There's two main leads. It's the mangaka, or I mean the artist, Mashiro, and his writing partner, Takaki.
yeah,
But
Tagaki.
yeah, yeah, and like in their introduction, like the Takaki wants to like pursue him, or say like, I have a story I want you to draw for me, and he's like, well, only 0.0001 manga artists can make a living off of being a manga artist, and that's very much true to this day, that mangakas are just underpaid, and same thing with like animators. Like it's an industry that is not very profitable, even though like overwork and suicide is like pervasive in the industry, and like it doesn't really tackle that in depth in these first three episodes, but it definitely lingers in the background, because the main character's uncle was a mangaka and like his role model, and the reason he got interested in becoming a manga artist is because of his uncle, and his uncle dies before the events of the series. but it's left to wonder in these like first three episodes, did he commit suicide? And in episode we do get an answer is that he just overworked himself to death. And that's
Yeah,
why the mother is so overly protective.
exactly. And it was interesting that you brought that up because let me see. And it sort of reminded me because when Mashiro had mentioned in the first episode how his uncle knew that Mashiro would become a good artist. A quote that I have here, he was saying how this was a quote from Mashiro. He said that he always avoided saying manga artist, saying in what Mashiro can become. And this sort of reminded me of a post that I read some time ago. It was about this uh, music artist. When she was younger, she played the flute, and she told her mother she was excited on how she was able to play a Zelda song on her flute, and her mother had dissuaded her, saying, don't play kid stuff. You need to study and things like that. And she was saying how 26 years later, she became so proficient at playing her instrument that she was part of the group that was playing the musical score for the newest Legend of Zelda game that came out. I think it was Breath of the Wild or something along those lines. And that's what I had thought when I first heard that. When I first heard how Mashio viewed his uncle, even though his uncle was doing manga art, and he saw how Mashio was doing well, and how he essentially not trying to put the idea that he wanted Mashiro to pursue becoming a manga artist, but now looking back at it after watching those episodes, it seemed as though his uncle wanted to save Mashiro some pain from what he's experiencing through. Like you said, how he was essentially considered a gambler because he was writing these different types of works and he wasn't getting published like he wanted to. And he was essentially being the poor, starving artist, so to speak.
Right, yeah. So there was a matter of like, again, like the distance between Mashiro and his father was very distant, but yeah, it's very wide. And then the uncle came into that position of being Mashiro's father figure, and that's kind of why his death and albeit his what Mashiro thought of his suicide hit him so hard. So there's even a scene in episode one of when he's recovering from going to his uncle's funeral. He like packs up all of his uncle's manga and all the action figures that came out from the series that the uncle was popular for, and he just bagged them up and like boxed them away. So it really hit him hard. And even in these three episodes, like I thought it was going to be a little bit more ridiculous because there's this. It's not even a forced love story, but we haven't talked about Akuki, which is the female love interest of Mashiro, that
Yeah,
at the end of episode one, he proposes to her, saying that I'm going to become a famous manga artist, and you're going to voice the main heroine when it becomes an anime. And then he's like, "Oh well, when that happens, I'll marry you." And I was like, "Oh no, don't go in that direction." And but then we spend another two episodes getting Mashiro in the headspace of, can I actually do this? So I think
yeah,
that's the greatest weakness of the three episodes for this is that with any slice of life, it's just a drawn out process. It feels like filler. It feels like, why are we watching this? The audience just feels so ahead of the story because we know that there is a story here. We don't need to wait for the main character to become the main character. We already know he's going to become the main character,
yeah,
so why waste our time? So I do like the character building in these first three episodes because we do get Mashiro's anxiety kind of pushed aside. We kind of get a understanding of who his uncle was, like you said, and then we get not much focus on the writer character. I keep forgetting his name, Takagi.
yeah. Takaki.
Yeah, Takagi. Like he's like a I guess a cheerful light Yagami would be a good parallels. Like he's kind of a fun version. So like all their personalities are really strong. They're like well written characters,
Oh, definitely.
and like the comedies like strong enough that like it's enjoyable. But yeah, like these first three episodes are a drag, man.
They were. I would say it's also reminded me of Keep Your Hands Off of Eizouken a little bit, sort of like a good precursor. Because if Bakuman didn't happen, then I don't think that Keep Your Hands Off of Eizouken would have been as popular as it was. Because as we mentioned earlier, it was Eizouken was a basically about these three girls getting together to make a anime club, and a lot of the same stuff that they have to do that Bakuman goes through as well. But I would say the difference between the two is that with Bakuman, I think because they made I guess the different goals that are presented. Because in Bakuman, it's I'm sorry, I'm forcing myself to say Bakuman instead of Bakuman. I'm a huge Digimon fan, so it's Bakuman's my default. But with Mashiro and his goal trying to become popular enough, or writing an artist, excuse me, writing a manga that's popular enough for a love interest, that sort of puts me off. Whereas in Ozukin, it's more of an objective view how they want to make a promo anime video so they can showcase it and sort of prove what the need for having a club like them. So it seems as though with the goals, they're a bit different in the sense of one feels a little bit more objective, where the other one more objective, more concrete. Whereas the goal presented in Bakuman, it feels a little bit subjective, even though they're going about it in an objective way. And it's like I feel as though like I would enjoy Bakuman a little bit more if the romance wasn't such a huge focal point about it. But I guess what they're doing is they're humanizing mangaka artists and showing that they do in fact love, and sometimes they end up falling for the people who are in the same industry, sort of akin to how we see a lot of American actors, they fall in love with each other mainly because their workflow is very similar, what they do is very similar, and they're usually that's when they see each other is when they're on the job. And I would say it's something that we see in manga artists as well. For instance, the mangaka who wrote Hunter x Hunter, he's married to the mangaka for Sailor Moon, and it seems to be a reoccurring trend where mangaka artists or voice actors, they end up falling for each other because they're on their job and their work schedule is very similar.
Yeah, so I think I think the strength of I mean, again, this is just a three episode review, so I do think that we are going in a direction where it's going to be more of that shop talk and like focusing on what does it actually mean to create a manga where keep your hands off Ezuken, it kind of like put that up front where like it relied on a lot of fantastical images of the girls and their imaginations where this is a little bit leaning more into I mean it has a little bit more bent of the realism is that these are ninth grade students and the whole idea of the education in Japan being really intense is that they
Yeah,
are disenfranchised to pursue their dreams, especially where uh, Mashiro is in the case of his grades are so low that he sees that his future is already set before him. That's why we need these three episodes to understand that he's going through this emotional journey or this mental gymnastics to just accept the idea that he can still pursue his dreams. Where Takaki is like number one student, and like his future is already set before him because he's just going to get into the best high school, get into the best university, but do something that and succeed in life, but he's not going to be happy in it. So again, like the character building is really strong, and then like the downside again, like it's 75 episodes. I can't really say that it's not good storytelling. It's 176 chapters of a manga series. We have a visual novel. There's a game. There's a movie that
There's a
has.
game.
Yeah, there's a game. Oh no, no, there's a visual. There's a visual novel game. So, there's a.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking it's probably something like Okami, where you have to use a stylus or something or a cursor to
Ooh,
do
interesting.
brush strokes.
No, nothing that intense, but just a visual novel game. So, like a branching story, choose your own adventure kind of game. There's a novel, there's a 2015 film of the same name, Bakuman. So, like, again, like, it doesn't seem like the story is going to be lacking. It's just like these first three episodes definitely get a sus from me because, like, I really wish like it's probably going to be episode 4. It's probably like right on the other side of episode 3 because like at the very end of episode 3 they're like let's start drawing the manga because like in episode 2 they get a studio, they get the uncle's like equipment, like
Yeah, they do.
um they see all of like his drafts, they get like a good understanding of what it really takes to be a successful manga artist, and then episode 3 you get the resolve of like the uncle's past love life, and then the main Mashiro's connection with his love interest, and maybe why
Yeah.
his uncle spoke so not depressingly about what it actually means to be a manga artist, but like taking the opportunity to pursue love as a goal versus just being like incidental in your life. So for me, this is definitely a sus. But Sam, how about you? Where are you?
Oh no, it's a sus for me as well. Mainly, again, it's because of the romantic storyline, and I would say that the romantic storyline does help a little bit to view their objective in a more critical way. For instance, I think it was episode 3 or episode 2 where Michio was saying how or at least how being upfront with his being upfront with his chances in becoming a good mangaka or a popular mangaka, because he was saying how his love interest, he was upfront with himself. She was a pretty girl, pretty plain. Well, not plain girl, but she's a pretty girl. She's humble. She is not full of herself, and she's very hardworking. And he was saying that somebody like her is probably going to break out in a starring role at a young age, probably before she hits 18. And so for him to account for that, he's going to have to start out right now, like in his age group, to try to become as big and as big as he can, as fast as he can, so that he can be on the same level as her. And one other thing that you had mentioned before is with voice actors or artists of that kind, there's actual schooling for that. And even though they aren't treated very well by the industry, it seems like they're treated more favorably than the manga artists themselves. So he just them being more upfront with themselves about how many obstacles that they're going to run into to have their goals, or to run into their goals that they want to achieve. It's very, very refreshing. And as you said, the dynamic of the two main characters is very, very well. But again, because of the romance aspect of the story, it makes me sus, because I've seen plenty of times before where romance is always the objective, and it seems very cookie cutter and very, I'm trying to find the word. The ending is seems very clear to me, and I like to have some air of mystery in my stories, and romance is just not one of them. So that's why it's in the sus category for me.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, romance when it's done bad can be really detrimental to a series in total. It can be the weakest link that brings down a completely sound series by its ankles. But yeah, I mean, the last thing I want to mention is that again, it's a series that I feel has a lot of love put into it. Even the opening of the show has two openings. It has the anime opening for the Uncle's anime, and then it has like the actual
Yeah.
anime's opening. So again, it's a series that just reflects a lot of love for the industry, be it like the mangaka industry or the manga industry, as well as getting it eventually to that level of creating an anime for it. Because like that's not always the goal for a manga. I mean, a lot of worthy mangas in the industry don't get anime adaptations, be it because of a small reader base, or it's not financially sound because of there's no matching uh, studio that makes pre-existing IP or intellectual properties of the same kind. So I think one like Juju Kaisen recently got its adaptation, but like a lot of people are now like I would say now is like comparing it. Oh, this is just Naruto with extra steps, or like Chainsaw Man is another big Shonen Jump publication that should be getting a adaptation pretty soon. Like mostly when it
It
hits
has
its
become a
peak.
lot more popular. Yeah, I've seen that.
Right. Right. Yeah. So it usually takes 2 years for that point to happen. So, yeah, like the whole industry of mangaka to anime is like such a scheduled thing, somewhat. So, like, it's very predictable. So, I like that the series does exist, but yeah, it's completely sus off of these 3 episodes. So, Sam, now that we've talked thoroughly about Bakuman, you want to wrap up this episode?
All I can really say, Jay, is